What up, YouTube? So I got another drone build video for you. Originally I wasn't going to film this, but then I noticed that there wasn't any build videos for this drone. So I figured we'd build it together. So it's a iFlight Protek25 HD Cinewhoop. And I was a victim of an Instagram ad. I saw an Instagram ad for this Cinewhoop advertised as a sub 250 paired with the Cadox Peanut. And I was I have a need for small sub 250 Cinewhoop. So I just thought, man, it looks like it flies really good. The reviews are good. So I went ahead and bought it. Now, typically this is a bind and fly, but the thing is, I had an extra Cadox Polar Vista because I was going to, I thought that we were going to have another camera shortage, so I bought an extra one, and then it turned out it was the opposite, that the DJI cameras came out. So instead of buying the bind and fly, and plus I use tracer, and you can't get bind and fly in tracer. And since I had an extra Vista unit, I thought I'll just buy the parts and then build it together. So it's probably me overthinking things, but I was really confused on how to build the stack with the Vista unit. So that's why I figured it would be worth filming. But I kind of did my research, and I think I know how I'm going to do it. I don't know if it's exactly how they do it if you do the bind and fly, because there's not really any documentation on it. They do give you this to tell you what screws to use, but there's really no like how to assemble a stack documentation. So I figured we'd go through this together. So the first thing you got to understand is what is top and what is bottom. So this is top, and then of course bottom is bottom, but you're mounting the stack upside down since it is a pusher. So that can be a little confusing. So the stack's going to go like that, and then for the stack you're supposed to use these M2 by 16 millimeter button head, and I already went ahead and put Loctite on them and let them dry. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but it makes me feel better. But in my experimentation so far, I feel that the 16 millimeter is a little too long. And a 14 would be perfect, but they came with 16s. They call for 16s, and then my M2 kit skips 16s. My M2 kit only has it skips M14s. It only has M16s and it has M12s. So hopefully we can do this without cutting it down. So like I said, I bought all the parts separate. So I bought a Succeed Whoop version 3 all-in-one. So it's the iFlight's all-in-one. I bought everything from iFlight. Although people do complain, I saw people who bought the bind and flies complain that they had a lot of these blow up on them. So we'll see how long it lasts. So then they give you these little M2 by M3 grommets that you put in the flight controller. Now, I wish they had, I figured out how I'm going to assemble the stack. And like I said, I don't know if there's a better way. If you know a better way to assemble the stack, or if you have this and you know how they assembled the stack, please comment below. But that was a big thing. I really was dwelling on this project, trying to figure out how to assemble the stack, but pretty much you just got to go for it and see how it works out. I would have just bought the bind and fly without the RX if I didn't already have the don't want to break that grommet if I didn't already have the camera. Another weird thing when I was buying the parts is they seem to change the bind and flies. They seem to change what KV motors they put in them. And I'll show you when we get to that part what KV motor I chose. So I don't know if they did that based off of parts shortage or if they did that based off performance. And I couldn't figure out what was like revision 1 and what was revision 2 of what KV motors they used. But I went ahead and I believe I ended up going with what I thought was the more popular available out there, but it ended up being the lower KV motor. And typically my thought process when it comes to stuff like that, oh, get the higher KV motor. But I decided to go the lower KV motor to be a little more efficient. And also because the cool part about this is people will go around and freestyle these little whoops, which, you know, I'll freestyle at some, but really they're not technically made to be freestyled. I had built one Cinewhoop previously. I built a Shendron Squirt, just like Nurk builds his 6S ones. And I was flying it around the house to try to get used to it, because there was a point in time I was thinking about getting my Part 107 and then doing side work with drones and doing the Cinewhoop Squirt. But it ended up being I think that's a horrible Cinewhoop. I can't believe Nurk does all of his, well, he moved on to the Terraduck, I believe it's called. But I can't believe he does a lot of work with the Cinewhoop Squirt, because, like I said, I built it how he built it, and it's very underpowered. It's all right if you don't have a GoPro, but when you put a full GoPro on there, it's very underpowered. So I was never, like, I was trying to make an effort at one point of flying it every day around my house to try to get really efficient with it, but I could never get the throttle control down for it. Okay, so I put the grommets on with the longer side of the grommet facing down. The USB is on a 90-degree angle, which actually goes in this little slot right here. So this guy drops right down. Now, typically what you would do is you would put a nut underneath it to lock the screws into place. You would put a nut underneath it to lock the screws into place, and then so the screws would be static. But you can't do that on this build because you have to turn the screws in order to thread them into the Vista unit. That was the part that confused me. And after experimenting, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to tighten these down yet, but I am going to put these plastic nuts on top of the flight controller. And then once everything gets tightened down, I can tighten that nut. Also, I may or may not put a spacer in between the nut and the Vista unit. I haven't decided that yet. But that spacer will work better being up against the nut and not up against the rubber grommet. So the motors I bought are the iFlight 1404s, and I bought the 4600 kV motor, which was the lower kV motor that they were putting in the kits. And these screws are pre-Loctited. Well, these motors are very clicky between the poles. Oh yeah, while I have the motor off, let me count the number of magnets. So they're 12 pole motors, and they go on like this. And I'll use the screws given to us. There's two longer screws, which I'm assuming is for the prop nut, or since there's no prop nut, I'll just sit them over the side here. And I'm actually going to have to get my metric Allen, and I'm not going to film it. I'm just going to go and mount all 4 motors, and then we'll come back. Okay, I went and I attached the motors and soldered them on, and the whole time I was doing this, I was thinking to myself, man, this looks like a really neat build. I just like the way it's laid out. It's just, like I said, it just looks really neat. But anyways, yeah, so I took my time, soldered them on. Hopefully, I didn't really check this all in one. I'm guessing it runs BL Heli and that you can flip the motor direction electronically, because I didn't leave any room to flip the wires around if I had to reverse the direction. But just to make sure that I didn't bridge any of these solder joints or what have you, I used my LCR meter on and measured the inductance of the motors. So before I attached the motors, I noticed that the coils with the bell on were always around 11 microhenries. It was on 11 on the scale. I forget how many henries it was. So then after I finished and I cleaned up the solder joints with isopropyl alcohol, I tested all the pads with the LCR meter to make sure that they were around 11. Because if I bridged a joint, that's how you would be able to tell, is because the inductance would drop down if the joint is shorted out. So I haven't done a video on this, but if you do drones, I highly encourage you to buy an LCR meter. Mostly because, let's say you smoke a ESC, before you put a new ESC on, you should LCR meter the motor to make sure that it's not the motor smoking the ESC, so you don't smoke 2 ESCs. Because as you know, if you just read it with a regular multimeter on resistance, it'll just show a short, because you know, that's not how motors work. Motors are just a coil of wire. You need to know, the inductance would tell you if there's actually something wrong with the motor. Yeah, and the build, they come with these little hard plastic guards that you thread the wires through, and then double-sided stick tape on the arm. I think that looked pretty neat. It came out really cool, and it'll protect the motor wires. And then my only complaint, though, and I thought about doing a rambling video on YouTube talking about this to see if any other drone pilots have this problem. But lately I've been really picky on my hardware, because let's say you buy a multi-hardware kit from Amazon, which I have several kits. It seems like the hardware, even though it has like the label like 10.9 tensile strength or whatever, seems like the hardware is very soft and they'll strip out real easily. While in comparison, if you go and actually buy hardware from a reputable source, you'll notice that the screws won't strip out as easily. And I bring this up because torquing these motor screws down, they seem like they stripped out real easily. They were cheap hardware. But hopefully they had Loctite on them, so they should stay in place, and hopefully I won't have to take them off. But definitely, typically with drones, I just put new hardware on if I take hardware off, because if you have a strip screw, it's a pain in the neck. But yeah, these little, well, they're M2s, but they seem like they were very, they stripped real easily. Okay, I soldered on the power connector. It was pretty self-explanatory, although I'm trying to make this build neat. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not too happy with how the solder joints look, but they're structurally okay, in my opinion. I wanted to show you this. I'm following this guide right here. Or, not guide. Like I said, there is no guide for this quadcopter. But I'm following this photo that they have on the iFlight website. And it shows the cap kind of catty corner to the Vista unit. But as you can see, you see the propeller? The propeller is so close to the cap, I thought that was kind of weird. So I did mine a little different. I put mine directly in the center, and then I put a little heat shrink over the legs of the capacitor, and then I also put a tie wrap so that capacitor is actually tie wrapped to the battery lead for strain relief. Now, I do want to somehow put strain relief on the actual battery lead so it doesn't pull off from the flight controller. I'll have to figure out where I'm going to do that at, probably later on. This, oh yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this before in any of the video, in the prior video, because it's a couple days later, but I'm not really happy with the color of this blue. This blue is a lot different than what it looked like in the photos. But anyway, what I was going to say is this plate doesn't seem to fit like square to the carbon. So the capacitor, okay. So if I stretch it, I can kind of get the arms to fit. But then there's a gap here, and that capacitor is kind of touching on the gap, but it's not a big deal if it... I don't think it's that big of a deal if it... you see, we can push the capacitor in to be on the other side of that ledge like that. Oh, there we go. So that's how it's going to be. Now, whether the capacitor will then have room to clear the Vista unit, but pretty much that can all be fixed. I can just cut out this little piece of plastic right here, and then that whole ordeal will be over with. But I don't know, but my point is it just didn't seem like it fit that good. So anyway, we're going to move on to the receiver and the Vista unit, which are all plug connectors. Okay, I got all the soldering done. Really simple build, the way they have the connectors on the flight controller and what have you. I just want to point out something. So I went on their website, and they have really simple laid out schematics. But first off, I want to point out that there's two connectors for your DJI transmitter, depending on if you're using if you're using it just for video or for your receiver as well. And you know, they have these like 6-pin connectors right here. So I thought I was going to have to pull the wires out, but they have one fully populated, and then they have one with just the 4 you need for the video. And then the Crossfire port has its own connector too, and you do have to cross wires on the wiring. It's not straight through. You do have to cross wires, but you don't have to worry about it because they give you this wire with connectors on both sides, and then they give you the connector to actually go to the Crossfire. Well, this wire with connectors on both sides, you don't have to cross the wires. It works its way out. So, yeah, like I said, it's super simple. Now, I just had to figure out how to assemble it. Now, looking at I was going to put nuts in here, but you can't put a nut in here because of these ridges. A nut won't fit in these ridges here on the Vista unit. So pretty much, as far as I can tell, I'm just going to screw straight into the Vista unit. So we'll see how that works. They do have these like little tubes that seem like they would be standoffs that you could put on the flight controller, these flight controller bolts. But it would be a matter of trying to figure out how long to make them. So when I check the schematic, oh, I wonder if should plug it in first. So wires on top. Okay, that works out perfectly. So this plugs into this connector right here. And then it should screw in just like that. So let me get them started. Okay, so there's a big mess up. And let me checking the prints to make sure that this isn't something 8. Okay, good. So I'm going to insert a photo here. You can't use a regular M2 screw to go into the Vista unit. Apparently the Vista unit uses smaller size screws than M2. So in this kit, which was in this bag mixed with everything up, and it's not even listed in this. So I was using the M2 screws from the flight controller kit, but you can't do that. You got to use the M2 with this, like, I guess it's M1.6 or I don't know what size it is. Insert, like I said, I'm going to overlay a photo here, and that goes in the Vista unit. And when you do that, I ended up putting it mounts perfectly. Now I did end up deciding to put in M2 nuts as a spacer, but yeah, that's how. I'll get closer there. It mounts perfectly, but you have to use that special screw. But cool. Now I just had to. This has been a fun, build. Usually I build 5-inch quadcopters, but this little setup, I like the way it's been fun. So now I just got to figure out. I think I'm going to do a Blackmagic smoke test first. And then after that, I got to figure out how to put everything together. But I thought I would just go and share that's the secret that no one tells you, or I overlooked it or didn't see any documentation about it, that there is a special screw for the stack for the Vista unit. Okay, I didn't think far enough ahead to realize the fact that I actually had no way to charge an XT30 battery. So I had to wait a couple of days for these XT30 to XT60 adapters to come in to charge the batteries. But while I waited for that, I kind of decided to just go ahead and finish assembling everything. Now, there was one problem I did find, and I'll overlay a photo right now. The way the Vista unit is mounted, the VTX antenna connector on the Vista unit is right above the power input to the flight controller, and they were pretty much touching. So I put electrical tape in between them. So hopefully that'll be enough to never let it short out, but I kind of really don't trust that. That seemed kind of a little sketchy. But other than that, I really enjoy the way the build came out. I am a little, I'm out of frame here. I am a little concerned the fact that there seems to be a little bit of gap between the heat shrink of the Vista unit, the heat sink of the Vista unit and the actual board. But I guess that's normal. But I'm just going to go ahead and do the smoke test. The battery's just about finished charging now. My smoke stopper does have an XT30 connector on it, so that's cool. And I figured I'll do the smoke test right here, and we'll have this. We'll have a 2-for-1. We'll have smoke on video, and we'll have me scorching my carpet on video. I did go ahead and bind the transmitter, which that ended up being an ordeal because I accidentally pressed enter at the end, even though I was supposed to press exit, and it tried to rebind it, and then it kind of locked up the transmitter that it couldn't get. It locked up the receiver that you couldn't rebind the receiver, And luckily, after searching on the internet, I found a forum post that showed some obscure thing. I think they called it like emergency recover mode. Some obscure button press sequence to kind of unlock the receiver from not being binded and allows you to actually bind the receiver again. So that was a pain in the butt. And apparently, I'm not the only one who has had that problem when I Google searched it. But and so I already configured that. So I set up the transmitter, and I didn't touch anything else in beta flight. So once I power on, I'm going to go and check the motor directions. And like I said, hopefully I can just go into BL Heli and swap the motor directions electronically. And then we will probably be ready just to do a test flight on stock PIDs. I am printing out a Cadex peanut mount for it right now that is made specifically by iFlight. And the only way I found that mount is because on that, remember how I said the whole reason I started doing this build was because I got conned into an Instagram ad for this? Well, that YouTube video that was attached to that Instagram ad, someone asked in the comments about the Cadex peanut mount, and they gave a link to a Google Drive document that had the mount. So other than that, you had to use, either make your own mount or use someone else's mount. So we'll see how that works. I still don't know exactly what size screw. You see, it's a GoPro style mount, but it looks like it's a lot smaller. It's not a real GoPro style mount. But I'm printing that out now. Okay, we're ready for the smoke test. I'm going to be flying it with the 4S battery. Oh yeah, that was another thing, is a lot of people build these, I found out. A lot of people build these with 3S batteries, and I was like, did I mess up that this is supposed to be for 3S? And the answer is no. When I checked the iFlight website, they do recommend 4S on this. Okay, so here we go. No problem. And actually, before I connect it to Betaflight, I think I'm going to go ahead and try to pair the Vista unit with the goggles. Make sure that all works. Okay, I think we're ready for the Maiden. I did have to go and remap the motors in Betaflight because they were flipped on the roll axis. No, I guess they were flipped along the pitch axis. And then, as far as reversing motor direction, the flight controller, or the all-in-one, is BL Heli S, which I thought, oh great, now I've got to flip the wires around. But actually, I didn't realize this BL Heli S also has its own suite, so I had to download the BL Heli S suite, and I was able to flip directions, and I put the props on. Everything's a little trippy because everything was mounted upside down, and actually I had to go and I had to flip the camera, the FPV camera, 180 degrees because I had it upside down, because when I put it on, I wasn't thinking right. Okay, so this will be the Maiden. This is stock PIDs and stock rates on Betaflight. Should I do a little line of sight? I guess I'll do a little line of sight, even though I'm horrible at it. Should I try to? I guess I'll try to. Okay, I got the build finished. Somehow it came out to 271 grams, but they advertised with the peanut and with the 650 milliamp battery, it should be under 250. So I don't know exactly what went wrong there. I'm not really too worried about that. But I'm going to have to reprint this mount for the peanut because the back isn't open wide enough to put the USB adapter in. So I modified the print to make it wide enough. And also, it's a little cockeyed, which I think that's from me pulling it off the build plate while it was warm. So on this next print, I'm gonna wait till it totally gets to room temperature before I pull it off the build plate. When you use horizontal leveling, it doesn't really matter because the gyro is smart enough to know what's real horizontal. But when you just have it on FPV, float state, it's always kind of cockeyed when you're flying. So I brought it out here to give a little test flight. This construction site has a lot of gaps, so I figured I could take advantage with that. A stock tune with my rates, it flies great around my house, in my house, and then I flew it around my house like a 5-inch, and it had extremely bad prop wash. So I don't know if you could tune that out or not. Since it flies great for what I'm planning on using it for, which is not to rip it around like a 5-inch, I'm not going to mess with the tune at this moment. But hopefully I don't crash it because there's a lot of dust here. When I flew my 5-inch here, you just get a lot of dust. But there's a lot of gaps in this. And this is on, you know, there's a lot of settings for the Cadex Peanut. You really had to spend a lot of time to play with it to understand the settings, but this is just on regular Pro Tune. So it is kind of cool that this has the same video and control link that my 5-inch does, so I know that it's going to be fine in here. So because the Cadex Peanut is cockeyed, I'm probably going to use horizontal stabilization on this quad. Part of me wonders if I should try angle mode, because since a lot of Cinnamon Wolfers fly with angle mode. But these gaps are just so easy to fly with this quad. You see, there was a lot of dust that flew up there when I went near that lift. Okay, when I was inside that air duct, there was a little turbulence. It's a little darker in here, and like I said, I have the polar unit on here, so it handles low light really well. I guess I'll finish it off. And I still don't know exactly how to land We're at 14.5 now. Okay, let's see if we're still recording. We are. Oh yeah, one thing I noticed when you press the button on the Peanut, there's a long delay. Okay, so now it just shut off. But yeah, like I said, this is a really cool quad. I'm a 5-inch guy, and I still am a 5-inch guy. When I first flew this around my house, I thought, man, why am I flying 5 inches? Because this could replace a 5-inch and it would be a lot cheaper and more durable than a 5-inch. But 5-inch still has its place as far as freestyle. But it's kind of cool that you can freestyle this if you want to. Like, I didn't do any rolls there because I was planning on using horizontal stabilization on here, but in my house I've done rolls and flips. And I also, when I was flying outside, I power looped my oak tree that I usually do. It's just when I power looped the oak tree, like I said, it had a lot of prop wires. So you might be able to tune that out, but at this point I'm just going to enjoy flying it. I'm not going to worry about that. But like I said, I thought I would put this video here to show how to assemble one of these, since there's no video on YouTube doing that. And quite frankly, it makes sense just to buy the bind and fly. But like I said, for my case, since I had an extra Vista Polar unit laying around, I thought it was worth building one. It's a neat little build. People do complain that these flight controllers do explode. Time will tell as far as that. They did have a lot of revisions on those flight controllers, so maybe since I bought mine standalone and it's version 3.2, hopefully mine won't explode. But motors don't get hot. Yeah, I'm rambling on too much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.